Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to yet another fantastic event, this time with LinkedIn, this CSUEA and Pipelines. We are so grateful to have each and every one of you here today to talk about all the exciting things about creativity and creative portfolios. So before we jump into the conversation, I do want to talk a little bit about who's hosting. So as you know, my name is Shari. I'm Director of Operations for Pipelines. We are a mobile app that connects underrepresented talent directly to jobs and training across tech, entertainment, and creative industries. Jessica has dropped the information in the chat. Now I'm going to kick it over to Amanda to tell you a little bit more about LinkedIn Creative Studio. I'm sorry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Nice to meet you. I'm a fellow SFSU alumni from the Design and Industry group, in case anybody from SFSU is on the call. So go Gators. So I wanted to just quickly kick it off and give you an update or some information about the Creative Studio and who we are and what we do. So the Creative Studio is a group of about 40 people between staff and freelancers, and we are the in-house advertising agency at LinkedIn. Many of us started at advertising agencies and made our way over to the Creative Studio. Our team is comprised of account managers, graphic designers, copywriters, art directors, and producers. And the Creative Studio, what we do is we help with external facing advertising campaigns, tons of social assets, internal guidelines, design tools and resources for other folks at LinkedIn to use, and support needs across the globe. We have offices all over the world. We're excited to share some of the roles on our team and what we do day to day and what paths our own team members took to get here in case you want to explore a path into advertising. So welcome. I'll kick it back to you, Shari.
Thank you, Amanda. Haley?
Hey, thanks so much for being here. This is a really unique event and an opportunity to hear from these folks who are doing very cool work. And I encourage all of you to, if you're able, turn on your camera so that they can see who they're talking to, so it's not just speaking into a void. And thank you all for being here. I mean, it's a huge opportunity for you also, but we really appreciate you being here and showing up. And if you are a CSU student, and even if you're not, honestly, we have a ton of resources for you to check out on our site, and I'll be putting the link in the chat shortly here, including on-demand events like this that you can check out from previous iterations of our work with Pipelines and SHARI, and other resources for getting hired, working on projects, getting free summer housing for interning in LA, doing an internship course. All of those things exist on our site, and I'll be putting that in the chat again, so just keep an eye out for that. And thank you all so much for being here. And Shari, I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you, Haley and Amanda. Just so everyone's clear, we will have an opportunity at the end for questions. Please do not drop your questions in the chat during the discussion, because I will not see them or get to them. I will let you know when the floor is open for questions so we can make sure we get to everyone's question today, okay? So before we jump into questions, I would like the panelists to introduce themselves so we know who we're talking to. So we'll just go in the order of Courtney, Eddie, Dev, and then Anastasia. If you could just introduce yourself, your role at LinkedIn Creative Studio, excuse me, and then a little bit about what your role entails, and then we'll get to the panel discussion. Courtney, you want to kick it off?
For sure. Hey, y'all, I'm Courtney MARKGRAF. I'm a senior designer here at LinkedIn. I'm based out of San Francisco, and I've been with LinkedIn for almost 6 years now. And my role kind of just covers everything visual. Think like brand systems that we have at LinkedIn, like the brand guidelines and how we want to show up in the world, down to event marketing. So what this physical space may look like, or a virtual Zoom meeting may look like, and everything in between.
Hi, I'm Eddie. I'm a senior copywriter at the Creative Studio. As a copywriter, I help take whatever our business partners want to communicate in their business lingo and translate it into stories and ideas that feel conversational, human, and approachable, so that everyone else can actually understand what it is that our products do and what they stand for.
And hi, I'm Dev. I'm a senior art director at LinkedIn. And it's my job to essentially work alongside my partner like Eddie to take those creative briefs and ideate on different ways to solve the problem. And then it's also my role to help bring that idea to life visually. So that entails kind of setting the creative vision and then actually making and executing the work alongside any partners as well.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Anastasia MAGGIONCALDA, and I am the director and head of production of the Creative Studio. And I'm based in the San Francisco office. And I've been at LinkedIn about 5 years now. And my job is to oversee a whole team of producers and other operational people on our team that deal with things like resourcing and also asset management and such. But I have several producers on my team, and I work with all of the creatives and the account folks when projects come through to sort of guide them through the production process and ensure that we're delivering the top quality creative that we are meant to deliver. And I recognize some of you on here from my past life, so it'll be fun to maybe, I see you, Andrea, over there. It'll be fun to sort of go through, how we all got to where we are here. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And of course, we want to provide an opportunity to see some of the cool work. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to actually see it and experience it. So I do want to give the panelists an opportunity to share some of the exciting work that they worked on. We can go in the same order: Courtney, Dev, Eddie. They just want to show you some of the work that they're proud of that comes out of LinkedIn Creative Studio, so you can actually see just how cool the work is. So Courtney, if you want to kick it off and share your screen.
Yeah, I'll give a little upfront as to what you're about to see because I'm sharing a video. I mentioned that my role as a designer is helping shape our events and what LinkedIn looks like when we show up at events like South by Southwest. So I'm going to share with you a video of our experience back in 2019, which my role was to help with the branding of the space, as well as signage and what some of the experiential components may look like. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, and here we go. Thank you, Courtney. Dev, want to kick it off?
Sure. Let me just share my screen. Sorry. So I'm going to share a little bit of a project that we did for social. It was called Hack Breaks, and the idea was that we were creating these short little videos that showed people different work hacks, essentially. So on this first page here, you can see the storyboard that we put together. So this is part of what it entails being an art director, is kind of fleshing out how we want to kind of tell that story and how we would sort of bring that to life. And then on this next page, you can see one of the videos that we created out of that. And we used stop motion. So we worked with a great stop motion artist to bring these to life. And we created a whole bunch of these that were really fun and shared on the LinkedIn social media pages.
Thank you so much, Deb. And last but not least, Eddie.
Thank you. So I'm going to be sharing a TV spot from a brand campaign. A little background about this one is, I think part of our roles in the creative studio is to always stay in tune with the culture. One thing that we've realized was that a few years ago, NASA had released all this amazing footage about astronauts in space, and they made it free license for any brand or any company to use. And we noticed that they were also hiring on LinkedIn, and we combined those two to create this spot.
When I was a kid, every night before I went to bed, my dad would tell me I could do anything I set my mind to. Believing it changed everything. You're closer to anything. Oh boy, that's beautiful.
Thanks so much, Eddie. So I did want you to see a little bit about the actual work that comes out of the studio before we ask the question. So let's get into why we're all here. So first and foremost, I want to just talk a little bit about your career trajectory. Like, how I think like the number one question we always get is, how did you get here? Because I think a lot of people think there has to be a very specific formula to getting a certain place, and that's not always the case. And I do think it's important to understand that everyone's path and journey is very different. So if each one of you could just very briefly explain kind of a little bit about your career and how you ended up at LinkedIn.
Sure, I can start. So I started my career off in advertising in New York, and I've always been at ad agencies up until LinkedIn Creative Studio. So I worked at ad agencies in New York, in London, and in San Francisco. And then I actually went freelance for a couple of years. So I was freelancing with a bunch of different companies and organizations. And the last one I freelanced with was actually LinkedIn Creative Studio. So I was freelancing here for about 8 months and enjoyed it so much, I converted full-time.
I can go next. Well, when I graduated from college, shout out to Arizona State University design program, I realized I wasn't really ready yet for the real world. After interning, I was like, oh crap, this is scarier than I imagined. So I was like, let's do something scarier. Let's go back to business school and get a master's degree, because maybe I'll own my own ad agency one day. Spoiler alert, I don't, but I work at LinkedIn. And that came about from working at small boutique agencies straight out of school, to then just reaching out to folks online and getting new connections. And this is kind of a plug, but trying not to be, but I actually found my role at LinkedIn on LinkedIn. I had a recruiter reach out and said, hey, your portfolio looks dope. Like, how do you feel about working at LinkedIn? And I was just floored. So went for it. And here I am 6 years later.
I actually started off in journalism. And when I had graduated, I realized that I wanted to do more in terms of working with the digital space and with just communications. So I had actually quit my job to join an internship for an ad agency. And that ad agency happened to be one that focused on digital experiences, and that kind of opened the door for me to join the creative studio almost 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago.
And another plug for Courtney, she also is a business owner and owns her own coffee shop. So give yourself credit for that too, Courtney. They're really wonderful. We'll give you a link to them so you can go check out her coffee down the road too. So what I love about what everyone's just said is, you know, everyone seems to think that you get out of college or you study something and you start your career. I mean, I love how Shari used the word journey, because it really truly is a journey. And I've been on a career journey for many, many years. And, you know, it's changed paths so many times it's constant evolution, right? I got out of school in New York. I worked in the photography business first. And then from there, met somebody who needed a producer who was doing commercial video work. So I moved over from producing photography over to commercial video. And from there, became a producer and head of production eventually of a commercial production companies in New York City. And then made my way out to San Francisco, where the world was very different in terms of commercial production. And I found myself in the visual effects world. So I was an executive producer of a visual effects company and also did visual effects supervision. So did a lot of work in the effects world in the 90s, early 2000s. And from there, a lot of ad agencies were trying to build their in-house post companies and their in-house production teams. So I was recruited into the agency world at that point and worked at as head of production at a couple of agencies, and then went freelance as an executive producer. And then from there, found my way into the brand side of things at LinkedIn. So it's really a constant evolution. And I think the best part about a career journey is that if you keep something constantly changing, you never find yourself to be bored. So that's one of my big tips.
Yes, moral of the story, everyone's path is different. It's not a formula. It's not X plus Y equals Z or whatever, you know? So I want you all, because most of the students and talent on here are students and alum. So as you begin thinking about your own journey, just remember it's your path. Everyone's is different, okay? So to that point, if you're on here as a student or a recent grad or an alum, and you're thinking about breaking into this industry, are there specific skills or requirements or training that they need to have to work at like a company like LinkedIn Creative Studio? Or what types of things should they be focused on now if they're preparing for a career in this space?
Amanda, maybe you want to take that one to start. What do you think?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure, very concisely. I just want to know, for the students and alum here or recent grads, are there very specific skills, education, and training that they need to have to work in this type of space? Or what types of things should they be focused on now as they think about preparing for a career? And
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I just saw a fact come in about how time management is actually the #1 skill currently across all jobs that are most requested. So whether it's like someone in the food service industry or someone running operations or coordinating or project management or whatever you want, even art directors and copywriters and producers, you have multiple projects at once. So time management is definitely a great skill to have. But, you know, it just depends on like what your interest is. If you're a graphic designer, knowing like Adobe Creative Suite obviously is helpful. If you're a copywriter, you know, maybe you went to majored in English. I mean, I've seen copywriters span from journalism backgrounds like Eddie mentioned, or English, or copywriting majors. So it just kind of depends on you know, what your interest lies. But I definitely promote. One of the best tips I had was from my older sister when I was deciding on a major between business or graphic design. And she's like, just study what you love, because you'll obviously do well at whatever you're interested in. And I was like, oh, I keep going to the graphic arts class after school. Maybe I should follow that path. And that's where I started. Yeah.
I would also say, just in addition to just the very specific skills, I think also just developing your voice is really important. When I'm looking at people's books and portfolios or interviewing, what I find to be most dynamic and intriguing about a potential hire is just that they have a voice that is going to differentiate our team and be able to you know, bring the work to a different level, because we're always wanting to ensure that we have, you know, very diverse voices across the team.
I'll add one more thing to that. I think it's really important to know how to present your skills, whether that is talking to people or in an actual portfolio. So for example, when I had quit my job as a journalist, I put together fake work, what you call a fake book, and that actually got me that internship, which led me into advertising. So it doesn't have to be real work, but as long as someone can see your ideas, that's what matters.
Deb, did you want to add anything? Or are you good?
Yeah, sure. I think also just skills like presentation skills, like Eddie mentioned, and also collaboration, because the job is super collaborative. I work with Eddie, Courtney, and Anastasia, like all, on multiple projects all the time. So just being able to kind of problem solve together as well is important.
I love that idea about the fake book, because I think, even with directors or art, they think, oh, I have to have worked on an actual project for someone to look at me. And that's just not true. If you have a great idea, I love what you said, Eddie, if you have a great idea and you have that talent, as long as they can see that, that's all that matters. It doesn't have to be an existing project. So I thought that was a great point. Thank you so much. So I want to shift gears a little bit, because even when I work with talent, I'll tell you right now, not a lot of people know or are familiar with agency culture, especially in California. We're so production, film, TV focused, which is great. But agency culture is not that. It's very different. But I know a lot of talent, they either don't know or they lump it all together. So can we talk a little bit about what is agency culture? Is it fast-paced? Is it slow? What's the work-life balance like? How many hours are involved? What's the rewards, the challenges? Because I do think, to the attendees here, as you start to think about your careers, work culture is important. Where are you going to be working? Because corporate entertainment is very different from a small studio and vice versa. So if we could talk a little bit about, agency culture, what it entails, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I can start a little bit. In fact, this week, this is another plug for LinkedIn, but our team actually won the Ad Age. You may have seen this, but the Ad Age In-House Agency of the Year, which was really exciting. I just got back from the award show in New York. But what that really showed was that our team really believes in our team and our culture, and everybody sort of voted and filled out those surveys to show that this is really like one of the best places to work. And what I feel the culture is, having worked in the production side of things and the agency side of things, what's very different about the in-house agency world, like working on the client side for a brand, is there is a real strong work-life balance, much different than the production and agency lifestyle, where it is much more, it's very highly competitive, and it's expected that, people work very, very long hours. And what I think about being on the brand side and within LinkedIn, what is great about the culture is there is a lot of respect for personal time, health, wellness, and family. And so there's a lot of respect for that. And it is fast paced, and we all work, like Deb said, collaboration is key. But there's also a lot of respect for, the wellness side of things, which is, I think, a great thing to add to the culture. But I think you can't come in and just plan to be sort of a solo creative and a solo creator, because you really, really have to work with a full team to get the work out there in the world. And you are working with internal business partners who are marketers, who are giving you briefs, and you work as an internal creative team to bring those briefs to life through creative. And then you work with the production team to then bring the creative to life through production. So it's a very, very, very highly collaborative process.
I can jump in real quick too. Yeah, as far as my experience with the agency culture as well as LinkedIn, we really promote people to be creative and be yourself, and really feel like you can bring your truthful self to the workplace and have a voice. So that's really important. And even at LinkedIn, they go above and beyond and measure quarterly. Do people feel like they are comfortable being themselves and bringing that to the workplace, and not feeling like you have to speak a certain way or act a certain way to fit in? It's what we look for at the creative studio team is when we're recruiting and meeting new folks is not a culture fit, but a culture add, someone who's adding to the culture. So it's not someone that fits into the already, square peg, but someone that can add and round out our team.
I love that, because I also, again, a lot of talent feel like I have to have 50 years of experience to have this role, but your personality goes a long way. Like ultimately, people want to work with people who are team players that can work independently, that have a positive attitude. Like, don't discredit those things. Those things are just as important as the experience that you bring to the table. So thank you so much for weighing in on that. So as we talk about agency culture, because obviously freelancing, self-employment, those are a huge part of agency culture as well. So could we talk a little bit about the opportunities for self-employment in this space, for freelancing versus full-time staff? Are these all lucrative? You know, if someone wants to freelance, are there spaces for them?
I can, oh, were you going to speak, Anastasia?
Go ahead, Deb, because that's where you just were. So
yeah, I thought I would jump in for that reason. So I've kind of done both, where like I mentioned, I was full-time for a lot of my career, and then I was freelance. And I feel like it became very evident to me that there's a very, very big market for freelance in this industry as well. There's a lot of opportunities for it. Even here at the LinkedIn Creative Studio, we hire so many freelancers as well as full-time employees. And that's kind of the same at ad agencies too. So it's definitely, I think, a great career path and option as well. I found that it was beneficial to kind of start full-time and build up my book a little bit before I went freelance, because freelance is very quick. When people need you on a project and when they want to hire you, they kind of need to see some evidence of your work before, since you don't have as much opportunity to interview for several rounds and that sort of process. So I think it is always helpful to build up your book a little bit before freelance, but it's definitely not even just like a very large part of you know, a creative career, but I think it's also a very growing market right now, where there's a lot of people in that industry as well. And what's great about it is you get to work with so many different ad agencies and so many different projects. So you don't necessarily just have to pick one or pick one project. You can kind of get to a point where you're working with companies that interest you, working on projects that you're interested in that would be great for your book. And also have that opportunity that if you do feel like you really like somewhere and you really feel like it's a great fit and you kind of want to stay there for a while, to make that move full time. But it's very easy to go back and forth as well.
And just to add to that too, just to give you an example, the LinkedIn Creative Studio is about 30 people on staff. And right now I would say we have about 32 freelancers. So we actually have either equal to or more freelancers than we have staff at this time. And it's a great way for people to come and go and work, like Deb said, in different environments and meet different people and work on different types of projects. So I think it's a great way to approach your career. I do think, like Deb said, it's also nice to sort of maybe start out in a staff position if possible, just to have that learnings of how to be part of a culture and build up, like I said earlier, like learn what your voice is and be part of a real collaborative team, because sometimes freelancing can feel like you're popping in and popping out, and so you're not as much a part of the full team culture, and you get to follow things, you know, more thoroughly through to the end. But once you do that, I think it's great to be able to have the ability to keep things exciting by moving from place to place.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit there and say freelancing is absolutely a great avenue for graphic designers. There's so much out there in the world that needs a designer's eye, and there's a lot of opportunity there for everyone. So, I mean, I also feel like freelancing for a larger company like LinkedIn allows you to kind of almost interview the culture and the company you're about to work for. So I was actually freelancing for LinkedIn for a year and a half before accepting a full-time role. I wanted to make sure it was a brand I enjoyed working on, a brand I was excited about, and just something I feel like I would really pour myself into, as well as be proud of the work that I produce. So I think freelancing is a great way to figure out what you want to do, what kinds of brands you want to work on, the types of projects you want to be a part of, and kind of just assess where you want to go from there.
Again, your path, your journey. I'm going to say that like 76,000 more times so I can drill it in. Okay, so speaking of opportunities, at LinkedIn Creative Studio, what types of entry-level roles are available? Like if you are a student or recent grad, or you're in college and you want to know, I want to apply to LinkedIn Creative Studio, what types of entry-level roles should they be looking at? What exists? Because a lot of them don't even know where to start or what's possible or what types of opportunities are out there. So could you speak a little bit about that? Are there internships that are available, summer internships, junior roles that they should be mindful of? Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can jump in for that. We just solidified our summer intern, so that ship has kind of sailed. However, we will be looking at future intern opportunities in the coming year. So definitely keep in touch, and I will be sending our LinkedIn profiles for everyone to connect with us. And then I would just say, sometimes we don't have things posted, but just having an informational meeting with someone, whether it's at the Creative Studio or any other company you're interested in, if you can meet with someone there, whether they're on the recruiting side or even just someone in your dream role, putting that face, having a virtual chat and putting that face with a name and a portfolio, it goes a long way, because as a recruiter, I get a ton of names and emails and books and such, but having that conversation with someone, it definitely resonates and is stored in my memory, so that when we do have an opening, I'm going to first remember, who did I chat with and who did I already get along with and, like their work. And it's one step ahead of everyone else who is then emailing in your inbox.
Yeah, and as Amanda said, we do have an internship program where we have a summer intern, a fall intern, and a spring intern. So we will be moving into the fall internship search relatively soon. But I do think, an internship is an awesome way to get your foot in and to start building your portfolio. When I was at an ad agency, 11, as head of production, one of the interns I brought on ended up writing some copy that ended up being part of a huge national television campaign that she wrote. And then when her internship ended, we immediately offered her a full-time position. And now she's a big lead at an agency in New York. So, and that was just from coming in as an intern and having the opportunity to be there and show what she could do. So I think it's a great opportunity to search for internships.
And to that point, you would think, I think a lot of them don't know what materials they need to have. I know we spoke about books, we spoke about portfolios, but for entry level roles and internships in particular, should you have a book? Should you have a portfolio for entry level, or is that more so for mid and above? Because we want to make sure that if you are applying to these types of opportunities, that you feel prepared and that you have what the company's looking for. So what types of materials or things should they be mindful of if they are going to apply to, say, an entry level role or an internship?
Oh, I don't want to keep talking, but I do have one good point, and then I'll let somebody else jump in. But as Eddie said before, putting together the quote unquote fake book, but that is really helpful, because you can really see how the creative process in that person, whether you're a writer or an art director or a designer or whatever you're going into, just creating work even on your own to show your capabilities is huge. So for interns, we do look at ideas that they've had and work that they've put together, even if it's their own personal ideas that they created, like concepts that they put together. So I do think that goes a real long way.
I can add a little more color there too. I think personal projects are awesome. Those can be great. When I talk about fake work, or what we often call a spec, it's often what you might do if you go to a advertising school like Brand Center. They have you work on brands that you admire. I'm just going to throw out like Coca-Cola or something. You create an ad, you come up with a brief, and you try to imagine what a good ad would be for that brand, just to show off your capabilities and your creative thinking.
Yeah, from a design perspective, I remember my first portfolio was just full of weird stuff, like posters I made from college, like from different programs I was in, or like just different projects my professors would assign. But now there's actually really cool tools to help you create this fake book or like your personal projects or whatever. There's websites like goodbrief.io or like briefup.co that generate these fake briefs for you to go and do your thing with it. So that's a great way to create some work that you could feature in your portfolio that shows that design thinking or like the copywriting thinking behind it. And so that way you can use that when you start to interview for internships and entry-level positions.
Courtney, can you drop those in the chat so they have those websites?
For sure.
Everyone's going to save the chat, right? Great. So, and for the other panelists, if you think of other resources that students and talent could tap into, just please drop them in the chat. We always want to make sure that we come to these panels with more information, but also tangible resources that we can plug into. So if you think of things during the rest of the conversation, please do throw them in the chat so we can make sure that they have the resources they need to be successful. So thank you so much for weighing in on that. So now we're talking about portfolios. The number one question that I get, obviously there are bad portfolios and there are good portfolios and there are great ones, right? But I think starting off and being fairly new in your career, it's really difficult to know what makes a great book or a great portfolio, whether it's fake or real. So if we could just each weigh in on the qualities of what a great book or portfolio looks like. Obviously each one's going to be different, but just some principles that they can start to think about as they're creating their portfolios, maybe some do's and don'ts or some tips as they're creating their books to market themselves in the best way. That would be extremely helpful. So portfolio tips, do's and don'ts.
Sure. I think that one of the things is just making sure that your portfolio, like even just when you first get onto it, feels really clean and easy to understand. There's a lot of portfolios where people get, they make them too complicated or they get too carried away with kind of trying to do a lot on it, when really people who are looking at your work, they just want to be able to get on that site, immediately see your work in the best way that it could be displayed, and then look at the projects. So I think just keeping it really clean and easy to understand, putting only your best work on it. So being really focused is really important. I think starting off with maybe about 6 projects and allowing all of them to be your best work, because people always told me that you will always be judged by your worst project. So if there's something you're not proud of or you're not happy with, or if it reflects the type of work that you don't actually want to be doing at a job, don't put it in your book. And that goes back to, if you have to create spec work to showcase what you actually want to be doing, do that. And then just to also kind of jump into what else you could be doing to get this work for your book is there's a ton of ad competitions out there that are free and open to students or recent grads. And those are really good ways to get briefs, to submit projects, to win awards that could be great for your resume as well. And also just to see what other people are doing within the same competitions, and what kind of work is winning, and what kind of work are giving you that opportunity to do the same kind of work as well.
I'll play a little bit of the contrarian here. I think we've all been at the place where we started our careers and we had no idea what we were doing. Sometimes I look at a portfolio and it's less about the final work, and what I want to see is how you got there. So the real estate that you have on your website, if you can use that to tell the journey in your thought process, what kind of ideas or how you came to a specific insights and came to a headline, for example, or came to why you chose a specific typeface and design layout. That's incredibly helpful just to show the potential you have in terms of as a creative thinker.
And as what Eddie just said, I think some other things I've seen in some sort of beginning career portfolios that I've found to be really helpful in understanding the work is basically what Eddie was just saying. Instead of just showing the work, having like little mini case studies about the work, like this was the brief, this is how I looked at it, and this is what I made, and how that journey that Eddie just spoke of, because I think it's a great tool to help recruiters and anyone who's looking to hire or bring someone on, just to understand somebody's thought process and how they, their creative process and how they got to where they got to. And it also, as I mentioned earlier on the call, it helps somebody really understand what your voice or your style might be and how that's going to fit into the collaborative team. And so I think that's a really important point too.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone just said, and also just knowing what is the maybe design problem or creative problem you're trying to solve. and work backwards from there is great to know. And then I would also just mention an about section is also very helpful. It's kind of like the modern day cover letter. A lot of people don't use cover letters anymore. So the about me section is always helpful with, maybe a photo. It doesn't need to be a headshot or anything like that. It could be something casual, maybe something you like to do. I've seen people put pictures of, pets and such on there, but just giving a little, inside look into what you do outside of work too, and where your interests lie is helpful to get to know the person behind the book.
That's a perfect segue to my next question, because this is a LinkedIn event, and you'll be surprised how many people don't have a LinkedIn, or they have a LinkedIn and it's just like bare bones. So everyone should have a LinkedIn on this call. And if you don't have a LinkedIn, that's your homework after this call. Get a LinkedIn, especially if you're a creative or a young professional. You're missing out on so much great networking and collaborative opportunity. So I do want to talk a little bit about that, because you'll be surprised how many people are like, how do I market myself on LinkedIn? Like, how do I best represent myself on LinkedIn? So could we talk a little bit about, if you're a creative and you're looking to break into this space, what types of things do you want to see on that person's profile? Like, how can they market themselves the best way? Are there any tools or tricks from LinkedIn that they can include? Because everyone's going to have a LinkedIn, right? On this call.
Yeah, I would say it's funny because I have a 16-year-old daughter who just created her LinkedIn, and she just got an internship as a social media marketing intern. And she's got her little LinkedIn profile there at 16 years old. But I think the key is, in the about section, like Amanda said, to definitely tell a little bit about yourself, that as a person too, above and beyond just your skills and your background, just so people get an idea about where your passions are and who you are. I always read through those on LinkedIn, always, to see, what the whole person is, right? And then I think also there's the skills section, which is really important to put in every single skill you have. My daughter coached basketball at a summer camp, and she put it in there, and it tells you something about her, that she can coach basketball, and I think it's important to put every skill that you may have in there, so that people can, when they're reviewing your profile, they get a full spectrum, full circle idea of who you are as a person, what your skills are and what your passions are. So I think that's real important.
Yeah, and your profile is kind of like an extension of your own personal branding. So think of it as just like another spot for you to let your work shine. Like, even your profile background image can play around with your profile photo. Like, that could be a cool creative thing that you can get into. And then linking out to your actual portfolio from your LinkedIn profile. It's just another form of personal branding to help sell yourself as a creative, and a great tool to meet other folks that are like-minded and share the same maybe creative process or thought process, and meet new people.
And again, just a plug for the chat. Make sure you're taking down these things in the chat, because they're really helpful.
And I'm going to jump in. Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin, and I'm sorry that I'm late. And I lead the LinkedIn Creative Studio. And I'm so glad you were all able to come and make time, and I'm hoping that you're finding this helpful. I will give one LinkedIn tip. And it's as much like how to use it, as opposed to like what your profile should look like, and absolutely everything that everybody just said, like have a picture, have it reflect your personality, fill out all those sections. But in addition to that, like just putting your profile up and waiting for people to come find you is not going to work. It might work, but it probably won't work. So what I would really recommend doing is like reach out to, like, use LinkedIn to find people in your industry or in the industry you want to be in, whether it's design or writing or production or art direction. Like, spend some time like looking around, finding the people whose work you respect, and then reach out to them and say like, hey, I'm just starting out. I'd really love to connect with you and get some advice from you. And sometimes people won't respond and sometimes they will, but the more you use LinkedIn to make those connections, like that's how you're going to get to that job. That's how you're going to get known in the industry. So again, like, have a great profile, but don't wait for people to come to it. Actively reach out to people who you respect and want to get advice from.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm not sure if you gave a formal introduction, but Kevin is our executive creative director. He leads the creative studio.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Thank you for
I tried to give myself a like informal introduction.
Oh, good. Thank you for sharing that. That was a really important piece. And just to piggyback off what Kevin said, like this is a proactive industry. It's not a reactive one. And I think a lot of people just wait for, very rare occasions that, you get lucky and things come to you, but you have to go out there and get it. Like you have to network, even if it is uncomfortable. And there's many different ways you can network on social media, on LinkedIn, at mixers, all of the above, but you have to take your craft seriously and you have to be proactive with that. So that was a very, very important point that I really appreciate you weighing in on, Kevin. So we're nearing kind of the end. So I have one more question. I will open the floor for questions. So if you do have questions, private message me directly, please, and I will ask it for you just to move things along efficiently because we want to make sure we get through as many questions as possible. So private message me if you have a question and we'll get to that in a bit. So last question, just to wrap this up, I think this was so educational and inspiring. We talk about, the greatness of working in this space, but I do think it's important to understand the challenges that come along with this space as well. So if we could talk a little bit about, the challenges or things that may be a little difficult so we can make sure that if you're getting to this space, there are, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, but I want to make sure that we have a well-rounded, accurate picture of what this entails. So we could talk about some of the challenges in your role or in your space that they may face if they're working in the industry.
We need another whole hour to talk about that. I think I think you need to have a really thick skin to work in this industry. Being creative is an intensely personal endeavor, and the best creatives, the ones that I like working with, are the ones who really, really care deeply about the work that they do. But it's not just about being creative; it's about solving real business challenges as well. And so most of the time, the work that you do is not going to happen exactly as you conceive of it. There are going to be a lot of different changes to it. And even once a thing gets approved, there are going to be a lot of different changes to it. So I think, embracing rejection, I would say, is like the 2-word version of that. Like if I took I've been doing this for a little while, but if I took everything that I've ever written over the course of my career and printed it out, and then took everything that I'd ever produced over the course of my career and printed it out, I'd have one really, 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 really big stack and one really, really, really little stack. So again, just being okay with rejection, not taking it personally, being like, okay, cool, I did a thing, it didn't work out, I'm gonna do it again. Persistence, persistence, persistence.
I think part of the challenge for me is trying to know the products and the things that we're trying to talk about as much as our business partners. We are a 10,000 person company, so things are changing on the fly and always trying to learn as much as they know, because we're talking about the same things, can be a bit difficult.
And just to add to that, I think, it is so important to just be able to adapt, because it is a very fast-paced environment. Things do change quickly. There are often new developments. And like Kevin said, you're going to come up with a lot of ideas, and only a small percentage of them are going to actually go through and be the one that, you're able to kind of keep working with. So, but, sometimes it's all of those ideas aren't right, and you need to go back to the drawing board and start again. And it's just that ability to kind of keep going, adapting to the situation, adapting with new requirements from, the clients or business partners, or new hurdles that come along in the way, and just being able to kind of roll with it, but still, being excited and being passionate about still making great work out of it.
Yeah, and while there's all these time, budget restraints, feedback from left field out of nowhere, that come into play and kind of feel hard, I think the biggest thing for me is the feeling of imposter syndrome. It never goes away, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's how you kind of deal with it, as Kevin was mentioning. You learn to grow a thicker skin, and as you put your work out there, it's kind of putting your child or your baby out in the world, and for it to get judged by your partners, peers, clients, what have you, it's hard. And when it gets rejected, it feels even harder. But just know that a lot of creatives do feel imposter syndrome, and you're not alone in it ever. And it's something that you'll eventually work through. You might experience it, like I experienced it this past week, and you realize, well, I think Kevin hired me on here because he believes in what I do. So I need to believe in what I do myself. So just own it and know that you can get through it, and the work will shine.
I can confirm that, Courtney, that I that you are here because you are good at what you do.
Thank you so much. Okay, the questions are rolling in, and I want to make sure we have enough time to get through them all. First question, and feel free, like I said before, unless it's directed to a particular panelist, feel free to weigh in. If we are interested in many creative mediums, is it better to have one website with all of your work, or create separate ones for each skill, like photography, illustration, writing, etc.?
I would say separate ones, and then to be really focused with where you're applying. So if you are applying, like for every job that you apply to, I think you should be super focused about what you're applying there for, and tailoring your resume and your work to that particular job, rather than making it more, because sometimes then it can feel confusing for the actual organization to think, okay, well, where do you fit in with us, and what is it that you're super interested in?
Yeah, and I would say somewhat the same. It's hard when you're looking to bring someone on and you find someone's book or portfolio that is a little bit, it has a little bit of everything. It's hard to decide where to place the person. Although the industry is evolving a bit to be looking for more multifaceted people. There's this new terminology. I don't know if you've heard of it. I don't love it, but it's called Predator, which is a producer, editor, animator. And so the idea is like, we want somebody who can do everything, which are really like people, it is evolving a bit into this world of what is being called the creator or the influencer type at this point, where people are looking for people who can come in and sort of wear many hats and create content. But many of the specific roles people are looking for are you know, they're looking for somebody who is a designer or an art director or a writer. And if you have a portfolio or a site that just has too much stuff, and it might show how talented you are, but it might make the person who's looking a little bit lost as to where to place you. So I think it is about being somewhat concise, but then you can also have your skills in your about section. Like if you're wanting to be an art director, you could do an art director site, but in your skills, you could put photography and writing and other things that you do. But just having some, whatever the forward facing piece is, it should be really clear, I think.
I think that it's a little bit of a tricky question. It's because like, I'm actually looking for people when I look for people who know what they want to do. And that doesn't mean you can't be like I haven't heard that term before, Anastacia, the predator type. Like, you know, if your point of view is like, yeah, I want to be a creator and write and direct and edit and do all those things, like that's cool. But if your point of view is like, well, I kind of like writing and I kind of like art direction and I kind of like producing, but I haven't picked one yet. There's going to be a lot of competition out there who has picked the thing that they are passionate about and are that kind of focused. So again, I think the answer is not necessarily your site, but like having that focus. And again, that focus can be on more than one thing or on being one of these hybrid roles, but I do think it helps for you to understand where your passion lies.
Thank you so much. Next question says, how do you incorporate your portfolio into your resume? Do you still need or look at a resume or just a portfolio?
I can jump in. I look at resumes. Usually they're embedded in the portfolio somewhere. Usually there's a little link to download. But yeah, for me, I'm a huge fan. So I do recruiting for freelance and full-time staff members for the Creative Studio. And I'm a big fan of people putting their portfolios, not password protected, if possible, in their LinkedIn profile. I've seen recently kind of a growing trend where creatives are not including their creative portfolios. So then it's just one more step. I have to track down their email, ask for a book and start that conversation. So if you have a portfolio link, please put in your LinkedIn profile. There's a section right there to include your personal website.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda. Next question. How do you all maintain a good work-life balance in such a fast-paced environment?
That's a tough one, especially in the pandemic, right? Because I'm sitting at my dining room table right now, if you could see behind me. So I think the toughest thing at this hybrid work environment at this time is teaching yourself to really shut down and not work till 8 or 9 at night because your computer's at your dining room table. So that's a big challenge. And I think I've been trying to put a lot of sort of blocks on my schedule to ensure that I stop working at certain times. And also I've been blocking in, which I think is a real, Kevin and I've talked about this a lot, is forcing yourself to block out like an hour to go on a walk or to take an online Pilates class or something just to ensure your well-being. So I think that is paramount in your success. It's like you'll never win if all you do is work, right? And so I think having a focus on health and wellness and your friends and your family and it is so important for happiness, and you're more creative when you're happy.
It's I'll give another perspective on that. Again, I am in a position where I can set the culture to say to my whole team, and I hope, the folks on my team on this call will back this up, to say like, your work-life balance is important. And when you need to do family things or personal things or what have you, like go and do them. And I try to set that example for myself. When you're at a place looking for a new job, like I said, it's easy for me to say like, yeah, go take that time. But I also understand that when you're looking at a new job, you don't always have that luxury. So I would say, if work-life balance is important to you, and I hope that it is, when you are looking at different places to work, like ask that question and get a sense of their culture, because work-life, the way that you maintain work-life balance is to work at a place that is supportive of that. So yeah, so for us, I try to create that culture as you look for work. That's a really important question to ask.
Can confirm you do, Kevin.
Thank you.
Another, as I think Amanda said earlier, time management is a true skill. So that is huge. And also boundaries. So knowing when to say no to things, like you get a brief at 10 o'clock at night, like, no, that's your boundary. So having time management and knowing the culture, and yeah.
Perfect. Next question. I know we talked about internships, but outside of internships, what types of entry-level roles are available?
Currently, the Creative Studio, I would say we don't have an open role for any full-time or freelance at this very moment. That said, things change quickly. So I think just getting ahead, please do connect with us all. I threw our profiles in the chat. I will add Kevin's. And please reach out and start that conversation. Let's have a virtual chat. Feel free, if you have a portfolio you want to share or want to run something by us, please do that. But separately, definitely you can go on LinkedIn and look. This is the Creative Studio, so we're a smaller group, but LinkedIn company as a whole is larger. So there could be creative opportunities potentially in other groups that we aren't familiar with.
Is that question just for LinkedIn specifically? What kind of positions are here, or is that just in the industry?
I read it as they just want to know like what types of roles they should be looking for outside of if they don't want an internship, what types of roles, entry level, should they be looking at?
Yeah, it's the titles for entry level roles in the advertising industry. Junior, typically start with junior, even though I think that word is getting phased out. But junior art director, junior writer, junior designer, junior producer, or associate is another word to look for, which sort of means entry level. Again, I would say also, like, a lot of those jobs don't get posted on LinkedIn as much as I would like them to be posted on LinkedIn. And back to my earlier comment, like the more connected you are with people, the more folks you know in the industry, the more likely you will have access to that information when you know a junior level position is coming up.
I can share an anecdote about that. I remember mentioning the fake spec book that I had made. When I had made that, I'm a lot older than I look. There's this website called Redbook that had all the creative directors in the North Carolina area where I was at, and I sprayed and prayed. It means I sent out an email directly to that creative director, and about like 5 actually reached back, and none of them had a job for me at the moment, but they bought me lunch because they could tell that I was a poor student. And they said if any opportunities opened up or any freelance things opened up that they would consider me. And one of the creative directors actually said, we don't have a job for you, but we have an internship. Would you take it? And that's why I quit my job for the internship and broke into the industry.
And by the way, I remember when the Red Book was an actual physical book and wasn't online. So maybe I'm exactly as old as I look.
I think it's much easier nowadays with LinkedIn. You could actually find the leaders and hiring managers at the companies that you aspire to work for.
And like Kevin said before too, the networking, I mean, sending out messages to people who you think would be interesting to speak with and that you could learn from is huge. I get messages quite often asking just for an informational conversation or coffee or anything. And I always respond and always set up time to speak with people. And for me, it's been really beneficial on the reverse side of it is to find people who are really interesting and put them in my Rolodex for future needs too. So I think you're always set. The more people you know, the more opportunities you have. So
I think what Anastasia just said is really important, not to like blast someone you don't know asking for a job. But if you ask someone for help, they're more likely to give help. I don't know of anyone who wouldn't respond back with at least something.
Those are all great points. I always, Haley knows this, on every single panel, I find myself saying that closed mouths don't get fed. I'm gonna, like I always say, I'm gonna make a shirt and like trademark it because it's so true. Like the worst thing that can happen is they don't respond. That's literally the absolute worst that can happen, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't shoot your shot and at least reach out. So make sure, again, to my earlier point and Kevin's point, be proactive. Like you never know what could come of it, whether now or down the line. You never know what they're looking for. So we only have time for one more question, and then we have some notes about part 2 of this. The last question asks, how can we access more specific and advanced ways to build a portfolio? And have you ever paid someone for professional assistance with building your portfolio?
I would start by saying, try to look up creatives in the field that you want to work in, whether that's art direction, graphic design, and copywriting, and see what they're doing with their portfolios. I think that's always helpful.
There was also a lot of great links in the chat. This is your hourly reminder to save the chat at the end of this, because all of the panels took the time to drop some amazing resources for you all. So make sure that you are saving this chat so you can have it for reference later. So, okay, we're at the end, but before we go,
could I say one more quick
yes,
thing
please.
in addition to what's in the chat? Another LinkedIn plug, but LinkedIn Learning. There are so many courses on LinkedIn Learning on how to build your portfolio, how to build your creative skills, how to interview for a job. There are so many awesome courses on there. And if you just go onto LinkedIn Learning and search, there's a lot that you can learn from just even upskilling there on. Even if there's an Adobe Creative Suite tool that you don't know, you could take a course on there to learn it too.
Yeah, and I know it's easy to say like go to ad school because there are advertising specific programs. So the Virginia has got one. Miami Ad School has got one. There's there's a school called the One School for Black creatives that a guy named Oriel Davis Lyons started last year. There's one called the Useful School. That again, like I think both of those are actually free of charge for students of color. So there are, again, it's easy for me to say like go to ad school, but if the question is, are there ways to pay or potentially like go for free, like they do exist.
And Kevin, I know that was a pretty lengthy list, but if you could drop those in the chat also,
yeah,
we'll all be saving it, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Because we want to make sure that you have resources too. Like obviously the information and hearing from people who are doing the work is just as important as making sure that you have resources to actually plug into that will assist you in your creative pursuits. So there's two other things I want to mention before we wrap. This is part one of a part two series with LinkedIn and the CSU EA. This is kind of the panel discussion, the Q&A. But like I said before, we want to make sure that you have tangible resources and that you feel supported and confident as you're pursuing these industries and your job journeys. So part two will be taking place on June 3rd. Haley's going to drop a Google form in the chat for everyone here, so you get first dibs. And for June 3rd, we're going to be having breakout sessions where you'll be able to get feedback on your portfolios from the creatives who are doing the work. And this is so important because if you're out there and you have a portfolio that you don't feel good about, or maybe you're confused or don't want some tips from people who are actually looking at them, June 3rd is a great opportunity to do that. We can't guarantee everyone will have a spot, but please include your portfolio if you have one. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you have a portfolio, that is the number one requirement that we obviously, because we need to give you feedback and critiques. This is a wonderful opportunity if you're an aspiring creative to join on June 3rd. So the Google form is in the chat, sign up, and then we'll be in touch if you were selected to participate in June 3rd, okay? If you have any questions, you can reach out to the CSU EA. Amanda has dropped everyone's LinkedIn profiles in the chat, so no excuses. Follow us across our socials. All that information is in the chat as well. But kudos to everyone showing up today and investing in your career. This has been an incredible conversation. I want to thank each of the panelists, the representatives from LinkedIn Creative Studio for taking the time out and really dropping the gems, because I even learned some great information today. So thank you so much. Again, we do this often. We do this probably every 3 weeks. We focus on a different area of entertainment, so make sure you're following pipelines.pro and the CSU EA, also in the chat, to stay abreast of what we're doing at upcoming events. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Go kill it. You got this. And until next time, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.